What Israeli former PM Golda Meir learned from the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. In 1973 the war between Arabs and Israel was about to start. Meanwhile, an American senator visited Israel on a special mission. He was chief of the Senate Arms Committee. A meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir was arranged immediately. She prepared 2 cups of tea and offered 1 cup to the senator, and another to an American guard who was standing at the gate. On returning, she came back, continued talking with the senator. After a discussion, they settled the arms deal. In the meantime, she stood up, collected all the cups, and turned to the senator and said, "I agree to this deal. You can send your secretary to my secretary for a written deal." It may be remembered that Israel at that time was facing a serious economic crisis, but the huge arms deal was settled by Meir with the greatest of ease in the history of Israel. It was quite astonishing that earlier, the Israeli cabinet had rejected the same deal. Because they thought it would be so costly, that the whole nation would have to make do with a single meal a day, for years to come. Meir knew about their stand, and said, "Your doubt are well founded, but if we win this war, and defeat the Arabs, history will remember us as the victors, and in history, once a community is known as the victor, it forgets how many eggs they ate and how many times they had food. Whether there was jam, honey, butter on the table, or how many holes they had in their shoes. Or whether the sheaths of their swords were new or old. A conqueror is a conqueror." Based on Meir's solid logic, the Israeli cabinet approved the deal. Later it was proved that the decision taken by Meir was right, and the whole world witnessed the Jews knocking on the doors of the Arabs with this artillery. A war took place, and the Arabs faced a shameful defeat at the hands of an old lady. After a gap of 1 decade after the war, a reporter of the Washington Post interviewed Meir, asking, "Was the logic you had in your mind for the arms was spur-of-the-moment decision or you had an advanced strategy?" Meir's reply was very surprising. She answered, "I got this logic from the Prophet of the Muslims, Muhammad, peace be upon him. When I was a student, my favorite topic was comparative study of religions. Those days I studied the life of Muhammad, peace be upon him. One author stated that when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, died, there was not enough money to buy oil for a lamp. His wife, Aisha Siddiqa radiyallahu ta'ala anha, mortgaged his battle shield to buy oil, yet there were 9 swords hung on the wall of his house. When I read this account, it occurred to me how many people in the world would have known about the worst economic condition of Islamic State. But everyone recognizes them as conquerors of half the world. So I decided that I would buy arms at any cost. Camps instead of buildings, but we would prove ourselves as the victor." Meir revealed the secret, but requested the interviewer to keep it off the record, and refrain from publishing it, because if she referred to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the Jews would have revolted against her and the Muslim position would have strengthened. Over the time, world situation changed. Golda Meir died. By this time the interviewer had given up the journalism. Meanwhile another correspondent was busy interviewing 20 famous American journalists. In connection with this, he met the journalist who had interviewed Golda Meir as a representative of the Washington Post. In this interview, he recounted the story of Meir that drew on the life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He said he was not ashamed to tell the story. Further, he said, "After this incident I studied the history of Islam, and was astonished to know about the savoir-faire of Arabs. Because I learnt that Tariq bin Ziyad conquered Spain through Gibraltar, while more than half his army did not have complete suit of clothes. They subsisted for 72 hours at a time on water and dried bread." It was then that the interviewer agreed with Meir's view that history counts victory, it does not count the eggs, jams, and butter on the table. When the interview with Meir was published, the whole world learned of this entire story. This astonishing incident is history's wake-up call to the Muslims of the world. It teaches them a lesson. It reveals how 14 centuries ago, a shepherd, clad in a cloak and worn-out shoes became the leader of the world, and conquered 4 continents. What do we learn here? Take heed, O Muslims, that your enemy learned a lesson from you and defeated you so bad. You should learn the lesson from your enemy who learned it from you. End.